DeGeneres does this whole thing on the Hawaii chair on her TV show. It's a 3,000 RPM motor strapped to a chair, okay? It's supposed to work where, while you're working, you can work out, okay? Now, in this video clip, this is actually segments from the actual infomercial that's on TV, and you're going to laugh and laugh a lot. But Ellen shows you how this thing is not reliable, it's not a good product, and does not do what it promises it can, okay? Let's show the video. So that is not a reliable product, correct? It does not do what it promised. You cannot work out and work at the same time. Ellen proved that scientifically, correct? Well, that's why a lot of corporations like Sony spend tons of money on research. And they actually test their products for a thing called reliability. They have actual things called reliability engineers. And what they do is they subject their product, the little sensors, the microchips, electronics in those products, to complete horrible abuse. Sony takes the microchips and puts them under serious testing for reliability to heat, cold, humidity, pressure, voltage, and they beat these things up to make sure that they are reliable. Right? And the question is, why does Sony do that? I mean, there's hundreds of chips in those TV sets, and their name is on it. Sony's name is on that TV you buy, so they make sure those chips can hold up to pressure and that they're reliable, right? Well, God does the same exact thing, right? God won't send us pain, but he will allow trials and allow situations and allow problems and allow storms to come. And why does he do that? To make sure that we're reliable. Because the thing is, you can only please him. The only surefire way is through faith, right? And Romans 5 says that suffering produces perseverance. And perseverance builds character, which makes you more like him, which breeds hope and brings faith. See, God, it's kind of like us. We want to hang with people that are like us, right? Well, God hangs out with us, and there's no one like him. So he wants to hang out with folks that are like him. Well, he breeds that in us through trials. He makes us more like him by shaping our character to make us more reliable, right? And because his name is on us. So before he can send us out to do his work and do his will, we've got to prove our reliability, right? Because his name is on us. So that's how that works. But also I want to show you, too, a thing in the parable of the shrewd manager in Luke 16:10. This is about money and material wealth, obviously. But I believe it applies to spiritual wealth as well. In Luke 16:10 it says, "Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. And whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much. So if you have not been trustworthy in handling worldly wealth or spiritual wealth, who will trust you with true riches?" In a spiritual vein, to me, true riches is knowing him and knowing him intimately and being used, allowed to be used to advance his kingdom. It's seeing more and more and more of him in the Spirit. It's being allowed to be used by him. It's him being pleased with us, right? Forget money. It's him being pleased with us. That is true wealth and true riches. And what he's really doing is he's watching our integrity. He's watching our integrity. This is kind of fun. This thing here, I keep seeing this in my school office. Somebody, and I think it's a kid is what I think. I don't know for sure, but somebody at school keeps placing these things in my office. They're everywhere. I got tons of them, right? I find them under my telephone. I find them under my books and binders. I find them in my umbrellas. I find them in my jacket. I find them in my coat pocket. Last week, there was one in my umbrella. And it rained last week. It was in my umbrella. I go outside. I do traffic duty with the umbrella. I'm soaking wet. I'm holding the umbrella for a good 15 minutes. And out of the blue, this falls and hits me in the head. Out of the blue. And what this says is, it says, God is washing you. God is watching you. And some child wrote this. They spelled it really badly. And they spelled washing, W-O-S-H-E-I-N-G. God is washing you. God is watching you with these eyes, okay? And to me, this has many meanings, and I find this over and over and over on my windows, on my door, on my chair, everywhere for the last 2 years now this is going on. This is like a month worth of these things, but they're always showing up. And God is watching our integrity. He's watching our integrity. Things like, how do I handle rejection? How do I handle disappointment? How do I handle fear? How do I handle my pride? How do I handle helping somebody when I don't like them? How do I handle helping somebody when I'm not in the mood or I'm hurting? How do I handle being blamed for things I didn't do? How do I handle all of these things is a reflection on my integrity. And to see, the thing is when you're going through trial and through pain and difficulty and your integrity is being challenged, the more you push towards him, the more you cling to him, the more you grab onto him, it's funny how you get washed. Think about that. You get washed of your pride, washed of your fear, washed of your own self-reliance, washed of your own self-dependence, washed of the world, washed of what you worry about other people thinking about you might be like. You get washed of all of that stuff, and what that really does, it makes you more reliable. When you show your integrity to him in a crisis, in a storm, in a tough place, you get washed of the world as you push towards him. It makes you more like him because the world's not important to you, and it makes you reliable, okay? So that's kind of cool, I thought. And then integrity, at school, when I do a lesson in the classroom, I always tell my kids, integrity is what you do when no one's watching. But what integrity really is what you do when God is watching. Okay? And what integrity really means is what you do when God is watching, even when it costs you something. It may cost you your pride. It may cost you your fear. It may cost you your time. It may cost you a job. It might cost you a friendship. It might cost you a promotion. It might even cost you your very own life. There are missionaries who put their integrity on the line every single day, and some were killed for their integrity. Look at Job. Job had everything taken from him. Everything but his wife. Everything was taken from him. It would have been simple to accuse God and blame God. God, how could you? God, how dare you? His wife even said, Job, are you still maintaining your integrity? Curse God and die already. He said, no, my God's sovereign. My God's holy. He gives and takes away. And it is what it is. Look at guys like Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Dietrich Bonhoeffer was an anti-Nazi in the 1940s in World War II. He was a Lutheran pastor, and he was involved with an active plot to assassinate Hitler. He was, okay? And he got thrown into a concentration camp, not for the assassination plot, but because he was associated with smuggling Jews out of Germany and into Switzerland. He was put in a concentration camp. Spent several years there writing. And one day, he stripped naked with his friends. Stripped naked and walked out to the gallows to be hung, right? And there are written accounts of his walking to the gallows. And the written accounts say that he walked out quietly, submissively, humbly, and in prayer. Not freaked out, not panicked. This is God's plan. This is God's will. He's praying. He's hung, right? But he has no idea that his writings that he wrote while in the camps completely shaped a lot of movements. It shaped the civil rights movement in Martin Luther King. It shaped the anti-communism movement in the Cold War. It shaped the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa. So all these movements came out of his suffering. Now, he didn't see it, but in the end, God was glorified. In the end, God was revealed and God had his way. It wasn't fun. It wasn't easy. He died. Sometimes it will cost you your life, your integrity. But some people some people have a price where they'll cash out, where I've had enough, or, there's enough in it where they're done. And there was a survey done in a book called The Day America Told the Truth by James Patterson and Peter Kim. And the question they ask is, what would you do for $10 million? What would you do for $10 million? And 2/3 of those that were polled, 2/3 said yes to one or more of the following. I'll give you a list. So 2/3 said yes to one or more of these. Would abandon their entire family. 25% said, yeah, I'd do that. Would leave their church. 25% said they would do that. Would become prostitutes for a week or more. 23%, they're on that one. Would give up their American citizenships. 16%. Would leave their spouses. 16%. Would withhold testimony and let a murderer go free. 10%. Would kill a stranger. 7%. Would put their kids up for adoption. 3%. So some people have a price. Some people have, with their integrity, a point where they tap out. See, for me, I have things in my life that I call non-negotiables. There are certain things that you will not mess with that to me are off limits and non-negotiables. And my son has found that out, and he authorized use of this story, so don't complain later, okay? But Maxwell, the last 5-6 months, has been buying and selling and swapping and trading guitars because he's trying to figure out what works for his likes, dislikes, for his whatever. Okay, so he's buying, selling, trading, and he got a hold of, a few months ago, of this PRS. And it's a silver, sparkly guitar, right? And at first he's thinking it's girly and no one's going to like it, and it's kind of silly looking. He grew to love that guitar. Now, Guitar Center's got a 30-day return policy. He had it for like 2 weeks, right? And he did a concert with it and played, with the guitar, and it was great. He's loving his guitar. He goes to open his guitar box, guitar case thing, and in there is a little card, okay? Let me stop the story right there. He opens the case, there's a card there, okay? Let me stop there for a second. Here is my non-negotiable. For 21 years, and this is not in the Bible. Don't tell me I said you got to do this. Don't tell me it's written in God's word. This is an Allenism. This is something that Allen does. You don't have to. It's just my thing, okay? My thing for 21 years has been anything that has on it 3 6s, mark of the beast, anything. Whether it's in the product number or the receipt number for the authorization code, or if it's in whatever, anywhere in there. I don't care where it is. On a tracking number for UPS, anywhere, I will throw it out. I'll return it. I'll send it back. I get rid of it. And not that it's cursed. It's my way of saying, God, it's you and me. I don't belong to him. I belong to you, and it's you and me. Right? It's my way of saying to the devil, you ain't got nothing on me. I'm his. That's just my thing. Just my thing for 21 years. It's one of my non-negotiables. Just me and him. He opens the case. In the case is the card where you send it in to mail off to the company. And in there is the zip code of the place is 3 6s. Straight out 3 6s. Maxwell. And he knows this. He's in my house. He knows it. He goes, uh-oh. Okay, and we're sitting there dialoguing and debating and talking about it, and he wants to keep the guitar, and I'm like, non-negotiable, right? And he says, but I want to keep it. And I said, but Satan, I said, Maxwell, it was made in Satan land. It was made in Satan land, Maxwell. I mean, what do you want me to do? It was made in Satan land, okay? He says, but it's go to church now. Yeah, it's going to church now, and you're right, the whole conversion and buying into Christ. Yeah, I'm down with that, but not negotiable. Okay? So we bring the guitar back, and we bring it back because that's just how it is. And it's worked out pretty well. He found out he likes other things better anyway, so for him it's been a blessing. But we went through the whole non-negotiable thing. This is my non-negotiable. And the Titanic. In 1912, the Titanic sank, right? It sank. 1,000 or more folks died, passed away. The ship should not have sunk. But the smallest thing sunk that ship. It wasn't that the iceberg tore a massive gash in the side. It wasn't a 300-foot size hole. What happened was the rivets, the little tiny rivets, had slag in it. I don't understand slag, but it makes the rivets brittle. So what happened was the iceberg was hit by the Titanic. The ship should have bounced off. It should have bounced right off the iceberg. What happened instead was the brittle rivets let the steel plates tear off the ship's frame. So 6 little sections of steel that bent like this sank that ship. It wasn't a gash in the side of the boat. And sometimes the smallest things, the things you don't see, the smallest things will sink your ship or sink the plans God has for you, or at least take them off track and derail them. It's the small things. So for me, it's my non-negotiables. To me, they're off limits, okay? Well, the prophet Daniel also had his non-negotiables. And even the name Daniel means God is my judge. And I want to go through Daniel and his 3 friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and a little bit about their history and what happened to show you their non-negotiables and what that meant, okay? Well, Daniel, in 605 BC, he's in Jerusalem, having a great time. He's about 14, 15 years old, and the Babylonians come. And they come and they ransack the city. They tear things down, they blow things up, the temple is set on fire, people are murdered and killed. And what the Babylonians did was they carted off a bunch of the Jews. They brought the wealthy, the noble, the professionals, and they took them back to Babylon. So Daniel was taken to Babylon, and so were his friends. And what they did was this. They took the wealthy and the professionals and left the poor behind as hostages, as captives, to make sure that they didn't attack the Babylonians. They didn't want a revolt once they left, okay? So they also gave all the land that belonged to the wealthy to the poor folk. They didn't come after them. They never came after the Jewish folk in Babylon. They had their land. They didn't want them back, okay? So he's carted off. It's the equivalent of you being here in church, okay? And they tear down the city. They set the church on fire. They kill half of you, and they bring you off to somewhere else. That was Daniel. They changed his name, and this is the part that I find interesting. To serve in the king's court, you had to be a eunuch. So he was probably castrated. He lost a lot. I'm just saying. So you would think that him being taken away under those conditions would be anti-God. You would think. You would think in that circumstance, he'd be like, God, you're not real, or God, how could you, or God, why'd you leave me, or how dare you, or, I'm not going to honor you when you don't protect me and honor me. You could have done all that. He didn't. What he did was he held on to his non-negotiables, right? So he gets there, and he's got to eat. And they're feeding him and his 3 friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They're feeding them off the king's table. Meat from the king's table. Well, the meat from the king's table is sacrificed to idols. And that's a no-no in the Jewish faith. And that's a non-negotiable. He's like, I can't eat this. He could have said, God, you left me, so I'm hungry, so you know what? I'm eating this. He could have done that. He could have said, you know what? God, forget all this. I'm eating. But him and his 3 friends didn't do that. Instead, they went to the person in charge. They went to the chief official and said, hey, we can't eat this. And the guy said, you know what? I'm horrified of the king. I'm scared of him. You're eating that. Well, they didn't whine, complain, yell, and get mad at the official. Instead, they went to the guard. They said to the guard, look, we can't eat this. And they make a deal. The deal they make is, look, give us 10 days of eating our stuff, and you have your magicians and astrologers eat their stuff. And we'll see in 10 days who's healthier. It's a pretty good deal, right? So this is the cool part. Before the 10 days were up, it didn't even take 10 days. Before the 10 days were up, God honored their integrity. Because they could have said, God, you know what? Forget it. They didn't do that. And instead, Daniel 1:7 says, to these 4 young men, Daniel and his 3 friends, God gave knowledge and understanding of all kinds of literature and learning, and Daniel could understand visions and dreams of all kinds. Because of their integrity, they were given spiritual gifts. They were gifted out of their integrity. And what happened was they found that when the time was up, Daniel and his friends were 10 times better off and 10 times healthier than the astrologers. What they did was they put him and his 3 friends into service in the king's court. They put them into service. Well, they're new in town. They're new in the king's court. They have all these astrologers, magicians, and things, and they're new. And the king, Nebuchadnezzar, has a dream. And King Nebuchadnezzar is sick of the magicians because they keep lying to him. They keep deceiving him and telling him what he wants to hear and stuff. He has this dream of the gold statue, okay? This dream. And the dream of the statue was the head of gold, the chest of silver, the thighs of bronze, the legs of iron, and the feet of iron and clay. It's a long story, but simply it's about 5 kingdoms. Don't want to go into that story, but that's what it was, right? But he tells no one what he saw. The king tells nobody what he saw in that dream, not a person. And he says, interpret that dream. Well, the astrologers are like, dude, tell me the dream and I'll tell you what it means. He's like, no. You tell me the dream and what it means. If not, I'm going to kill you. And they're like, we can't do that. Only the gods could do that, but they don't walk among men. Well, he gets fierce and says, I'm killing all of you. Now to Daniel and his 3 friends, they're in that group. They're about to be killed, right? So what happens is the guard comes to Daniel and explains the situation to him. And Daniel goes to the king and asks for more time. That's pretty gutsy. He goes to the king and says, dude, we can do this. My God's got this. Give me a few minutes more. Give me some time. He goes home with his friends. They pray. God gives him the dream that Nebuchadnezzar had and the interpretation. Okay, so he goes back to the king. And not only that, okay, hang on a second. He also said to the guard, wait, don't kill the Babylonians. Don't kill the astrologers. Wait, don't kill them. He could have said, you know what, kill them, then I'll tell you. I mean, he was a hostage. He was a captive taken away. He could have said, you kill him and I'll give you the interpretation. He didn't. He had his integrity. His non-negotiable. It was, thou shalt not kill. He had compassion on the Babylonians, despite being held hostage. Right? And he gives the king the interpretation. And Daniel 2:47-48 says, the king fell to Daniel's feet. Now think for a second. Ever watch VeggieTales, the cartoon? He's a zucchini in that cartoon. Nebuchadnezzar is a zucchini. With the little pop marks, he's cute and okay, he was not a zucchini. He was a mean, horrible, nasty, rotten man who killed for pleasure. And this guy is falling to Daniel's feet. And it says this in Daniel 2:47. The king said to Daniel, surely your God is the God of gods and the Lord of kings and a revealer of mysteries, for you are able to reveal this mystery. Then the king placed Daniel in a high position and lavished many gifts on him. He made him ruler over the entire province of Babylon and placed him in charge of all its wise men. That made the magicians kind of mad that he was placed in charge of them. But I want you to see something here. Satan will set things up to get you in a bad spot only to glorify God, right? Satan set Daniel up, but who was glorified? God was. Now, the king had this dream, and Daniel has the interpretation, and it's probably why he did the following. He sets up a statue, a 90-foot statue of gold, right? And he makes up this really neat thing where when the music plays, we all bow down and pray to it. Well, that wasn't a great deal for the Jewish folk. Now, many of them did that, but Daniel and his 3 friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, were like, that's a non-negotiable. In my life, I don't bow to idols. That is a non-negotiable. I'm not doing that, right? So the astrologers who hate the Jews because, just hate them, right? And they go and catch them not bowing down to the statue. The king calls in the three of them, not Daniel, but the three. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Calls them in. He says, dudes, you know what I said, right? You know that when the music plays, you bow down, you pray. You got that, right? Like, we ain't doing that. You're not doing that? No, we're not doing that. And he says, the king says, what God will rescue you from my hand? And the three boys say, you talking to me? Do you know who I am? Do you know who I am? Do you have any idea who you're messing with? And they basically say to him, look, we serve the living God. Whether we live or die, it's in his hands. He's our God, and we'll trust in him. We will not bow down to your idol. I'm not going to do it. My non-negotiable. Won't do it. King gets furious. He is livid. He cranks up the oven 7 times hotter than usual, the fiery furnace. 7 times hotter, right? And the guys who tie them up and place them in there, they get burned up and they die. It's so hot. And they're put in their clothes and their tunics and the whole thing, right? And they close the door, and the king sees a 4th in the furnace. He goes, it looks like the Son of God. Probably Jesus. I can't prove that, but probably Jesus. They open the door to the furnace, and the guys come out. There's not a mark, not a singe. They don't even smell like smoke. Nothing. Not a nothing, right? The king then says this in Daniel 3:28-29. Praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and rescued his servants. They trusted in him and defied the king's command and were willing to give up their lives rather than serve or worship any god except their own God. Therefore, I decree that the people of any nation or language who say anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be cut into pieces and their houses be turned into piles of rubble, for no other God can save this way. This king is in charge of everything, and he's ruthless, and he's nasty, and he's bowing to the God that we serve. What this also did was, don't forget, the Jews were in exile, they were captive, they were a hostage. And they thought God had left them. And they see this miracle, and it rallies the people, and it gives them hope. They see God hasn't left them. By their courage to have integrity in a trial and a storm, their nation was lifted up. And this king recognized their God. Then many kings later, because Daniel served 8 kings, and this is way down the road, but Darius comes along, and Darius loved Daniel because of how sharp and bright and good he was. And what the king did was he set up 120 people to oversee the kingdom. 120, right? And he was going to put Daniel in charge of all the 120. Well, they didn't like that a whole lot. And they came after Daniel, but after his non-negotiable. They knew they couldn't get him on his integrity or what he does in general. They only had on him his non-negotiables. All they had. If they can get between him and his God, they'll have him. Right? So they set it up through tricking the king and all that kind of stuff, that for 30 days, we're all going to pray to Darius. And Daniel and his friends are like, sorry, non-negotiable. We're not doing that, okay? So what Daniel was then praying 3 times per day and is caught praying. And Darius loves Daniel. He's his best buddy, but he has to honor his own decree and puts Daniel into the lion's den. He has to. And he's freaking out. The king is freaking out. He's up all night. In the morning, he runs to the lion's den. He's calling Daniel's name and everything, right? And Daniel walks out of the lion's den. Of course, the king then throws the other guys into there who set him up. But nonetheless, this is what King Darius said after Daniel showed his integrity with his non-negotiable. Then King Darius wrote to all the nations and peoples of every language in all the earth, may you prosper greatly. I issue a decree that in every part of my kingdom, people must fear and reverence the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, and he endures forever. His kingdom will not be destroyed. His dominion will never end. He rescues and he saves. He performs signs and wonders in the heavens and on the earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions. The king acknowledging the living God. Why? Because he showed integrity in a trial, in a storm, and clung to his non-negotiable. Yet again, Satan set up Daniel only to glorify God. Then later on in Daniel's life, Daniel knew the word of God to be another one of his non-negotiables. If the word said it, it meant it, and God said it. Well, in Jeremiah, he promised they would spend 70 years in captivity, 70 years in exile. That was in the word. And it was approaching the end of the 70 years. And Daniel hadn't seen any movement. He had seen no change. He didn't freak out. He didn't charge God. He didn't blame God. He didn't say, God, you said and it's not happening. No, what he did instead was he prayed, repented, and fasted. That's what he did. He didn't accuse God. He came before God. Okay? And when he did that, God not only answered his questions, but also showed him what every Jewish boy wanted to know, when the Messiah was coming. It's in Daniel 9:24-27. Shows him when the Messiah is coming, which shaped thinking for Jews for centuries. Then, of course, later on in Daniel's life, the king, King Cyrus, had such great respect for the integrity of Daniel, his friends, and the Jews. He sent them home to Jerusalem. Not only sent them home, paid for the reconstruction of the temple. Paid for it. Not only that, gave them back every artifact they stole from the temple when they ransacked it, because of the integrity of the Jewish people. Integrity, non-negotiable, sticking to them even when it looks like there's no hope. I'd like to invite the worship team and the prayer team up. Come to the sides, the prayer team and the worship team. All that being said, that's a lot of talking to make one small point. A lot of talking for one small point. If you want to change somebody's heart, if you want to change a friend's heart, a child's heart, a parent's heart, a boss's heart, you want to impact community, impact the nation, impact a school building, impact a workplace, impact a church, cling to your non-negotiables during a crisis. Maintain your integrity in a crisis. That will glorify God and reveal God's character, because you have his character. You might never see the result of your integrity. You might never see the result of your non-negotiable. But God will be glorified. See, integrity has one purpose, and one purpose alone, and that's to serve a living God in the best way you know how, to follow him in his will, even when it may cost you something. But how do you do that? You do what Christ did. He was beaten, abused, whipped, tempted, spat on, rejected, misunderstood, misquoted, misrepresented. But what did he do? He said, your will, not my will. He said, your will, not my will. And what he did was he put his hope and his faith in a God who was a God of integrity. He's a God of goodness, a God of kindness, a God of hope, a God of joy. He put his faith in a God who is a God of integrity. Thank you, God, for non-negotiables. And thank you, Father, for your love. And thank you for your cross, Father. And thank you for the blood you shed on Calvary, Father. Thank you for hope. Thank you for your peace. Thank you for your joy. And I ask that we're able to go out into our homes, to our schools, our workplaces, Father, and show you to other people and show off your character in us in times of difficulty, Father, that we can show your light and spread your love through boldness, integrity, character, and as we cling to our non-negotiables. May you be revealed in our lives, revealed in our homes. May you be glorified and may you be pleased. In your holy name, amen. What I want to do is a little bit different. I want to just close the service, but I want to give you an opportunity as well. There's a prayer, folks, in the front. If anything I said, if the Holy Spirit tweaked your spirit and you have a prayer request, a prayer need, there are folks up here who are awesome at praying. The band's going to play. If you don't have a prayer need, otherwise, we're dismissed, and we'll see you next week. Thank you very much.